this is a comment that I have actually shared with in a lot of my conversations, is that when we did our academic projects, most of the projects will start with, I have an idea, I have something in my mind that I want to bring into the world. Whereas if you look at engineering design or specifically new product development, you don't start with, I have an idea. You start with, what is the problem? Right. That's where, and this is similar to the conversation I had with Amod earlier during one of our earlier discussions, where we talk about the need finding exercise as a cornerstone before we even start thinking about that. And especially for young engineers, there is a lot to unlearn. Okay, so I want to ask a little bit more about the need finding aspect of it.
Yeah, so need finding is basically, we want to understand what are the needs of the user and where we can add value. But we'll have to make a differentiate between the user's need and user's want. So in the case of user's need, but it can be done in multiple ways. So you are visiting the actual plant, suppose for a particular plant, if you want to provide a solution, then you have to understand how user is actually operating, and then finding the gaps where you think you can add value. At the same time, then you can do the interviews with the user, understanding the different aspects of the job, which may not be possible only through observation. And then again, so with that one also, one can get lots of further insights about the need. And then finally, you then make some hypothesis based on the whatever the observation, based on the whatever the interviews or the interaction you have with the user. And that hypothesis, then you try to put in such a way that then if you approach the user would then user sometimes maintains whatever the user themselves, they are not clear about their need. True. So they just see the problem what they are immediately facing, and they want to somehow remove that particular obstacle or a problem. But as a good need finding exercise, we need to observe, we need to see holistically that entire aspect of the system, and then what solution we can provide. So finally, the outcome of a good need finding is that accurately defining what all the users need. And once that, if we are come up with a product or a solution for that particular need, that particular user is ready to pay. Yeah, the business scenario, that's what I think the most important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's also a recurring theme that we have observed, So every time we talk about coming up with a product, coming up with an innovation, when it comes to an academic setting, people often don't include the financials of it other than the project cost, Whereas in an industrial setting, every time you try to look at a new product development, you have to look at the projections associated with sales, projections associated with the cost of the product, landed cost to the business, what are the margins associated with it, what are the compliances. So there are just way too many variables to treat. But the commercials definitely play a very important role.
Yeah, because in the B2B segment, the first thing that user would, because anyway user is running these processes, right. So he's trying to add value. Right. So in that adding value, we are helping the user to solve his problem. Okay. So if I'm saying him, and obviously in return if he's paying me, then obviously as a user, anyone would try to see that one for an investment, whatever I'm doing. So in what time frame I can get a return.
Right.
So then that commercial part, the cost part is very bad.
Right.
Because if you want to have a successful product, then I think, like I said, it has to meet these three criteria. That it has to serve the user's need, it has to provide a consistent whatever we are trying to deliver. So it needs to consistently operate, and it has to be, which will tell us a value for money, which will give the user value for money, particularly.
Okay, so that's an interesting way to look at it.